Yeah. Okay. Like I said, great to see everybody. Let's talk about Elul. Now, we obviously have a couple of shurim to talk about Elul because Rosh Hashanah is in a month. Um, so let's talk about the essence of Elul, the quality of Elul, the character of Elul, and then we'll get into some real tshuva stuff in the upcoming weeks. First of all, Elul in general. Elul is a dichotomy. It is a split personality, if you will. On the one hand, there is a definite sense of yira, of however you want to translate Yira, probably not accurately translated as fear, probably more respect. Awe is probably good. Days of awe, whatever, however they translate it. We definitely have a judgment coming up in a couple of weeks. Rabbeinu Yonah writes in Shari Yira and Shari Tshuva, right, that the Mishnah Nichnas Elul, right, you have the Mishnah Nichnas Adar, Mishnah Nichnas Av. So Mishnah Nichnas Elul, when Elul comes in, Ad Motzi Yom Kippur to the end of Yom Kippur, Yehei Yira V'charad me'imas hadin. A person has to have a certain sense of seriousness, and the charada is trembling, right, from the seriousness of the judgment. Baal Turim writes in Parshat Nitzavim, right, Lulei himanti los b'tuv Hashem be'eretz chayim. That's pasuk in Tehillim. Right, Lulei is also obviously the same letters as Elul. Aleph, Lamed Vav Lamed Aleph. Reverse is Elul. Right, a person has to have, right, a certain sense of seriousness, a pachad, or an awe and a respect of these days. The Shlach Kodesh writes at the beginning of his commentary, the Maseches Rosh Hashanah. The pasuk says in Amos, Aryeh sha'ag mi lo yira. If a lion roars, who won't be afraid? And Aryeh is Rosh Tevos, right? Is an acronym for Elul, Aleph, Rosh Hashanah, Reish, right? Yud, Yom Kippur, and Hey, Hoshana Rabbah, which we can talk about when it gets closer, which is the end of the judgment cycle. That during these days, right, there's a healthy sense of fear and respect and awe, right, that we have of Kodesh Baruch Hu and the judgment. And Rav Melech Biderman, we're going to quote him a lot. He says they asked Rav Chaim Kamenetsky why it says Aryeh Sha'ag, right, as a lion roared. Sha'ag, if you know anything in Hebrew, and I don't
Arai.
really know much Hebrew. I don't know much Hebrew, but Sha'ag is past tense. Shoeg is present tense. So why doesn't it say Aryeh Shoeg? If a lion roars, who's not afraid? It doesn't say that. It says a lion roared in the past tense. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky explained that when we get to the end of the year, we see all the people who were successful and then ended up on falling on hard times. Maybe people who were healthy and then chas v'shalom, Rahman al are sick. People who were with us and now Rahman al chas v'shalom, who aren't with us, right? People who roared, right? Who never thought that these things could happen to them, and sure enough, these things happen. And we are ma'amina b'nei ma'aminim. We have emunah b'tachon that everything, all those types of things were decided on Rosh Hashanah. We can talk about what that means exactly. It does not mean that there's no escaping. Whatever Hashem decides, that's it. The end, finish. We just might, we just live lives as a robot. It means whatever. Okay, we'll get to what it means, but we understand that there is a judgment to happen that happens on Rosh Hashanah, and these things that happen during the year are judged and decided in some form or fashion on Rosh Hashanah. So how could we not fear, right, just a little bit? Rav Melech explains that our image of Rosh Hashanah that we have nowadays is a little bit tainted, right, by how we grew up. Right? He compares it to a baby who has a picture or a stuffed animal of a lion in his crib. So when the kid is like 5, 6, 7, let's say he goes to the zoo, right? When a little bit later on in life, right, he goes to the zoo or they take him to like a safari or whatever. So he runs towards the lion, right, with his arms out, trying to hug it or whatever. And his parents grab him. They say, "Are you nuts? What are you doing?" And the kid says, "What do you mean? I know this animal. I've known this animal my whole life. He's been in my crib. I have a stuffed. It looks exactly like this." And the parents are like, "Dude, that lion can tear you limb from limb." Right, so it's us too. It's not necessarily our fault that we don't take Rosh Hashanah seriously. When we go to shul, we hear the shofar, we dip the apple in the honey. Yeah, it's fun, right? Rosh Hashanah is fun. Well, you get a little bit older and you start getting a serious sense of appreciation of what it's actually all about. But says Rav Melech, there's one difference, right? A lion we run away from, right? As far as we can, right? As fast as we can. During Elul, we don't run from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We run towards a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Right? The Rambam writes this in the Parish Mishnayos in Rosh Hashanah, in Perik Daled Mishnah Hey, right? That Shehem Yimei Avoda V'Achna U'Pachad U'Mora. He says these are days of avodas Hashem and being subservient and fear and awe and respect, right? V'yir mimenu umavriach umanus love, and we run to Him. And so what that means is, and this is the other aspect that we have of Elul, is that Chazal explained that there's a tremendous kurva, there's a tremendous closeness, that we have with the Kodesh Baruch Hu at these times as well. That's the dichotomy, that's the dual personality, if you will, of Elul. Rosh Zalman Miliadi, right? You probably know him better by the name, the Balatanya. He gives the mashal, again, that's been very much popularized nowadays, that Hamelech Basadeh, that the king is in the field. That year round we have to go to the palace to see the king, get through the guards, put in a request, jump through all these, technical hoops and whatever to get an appointment. But during Elul, the king is out in the field. He's out here, right, to greet us. And we know that Elul is the acronym, most famous acronym for Elul is Anila Dodi V'Dodi Li. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a couple other ones. But to my beloved as my beloved is to me. Beloved with a capital B, a Kosh Baruch Hu being the beloved. But the Arizal says it's just like a Kosh Baruch Hu, right, is being our Dodi, right, in Hebrew, right, a Dod is an uncle. So that's not what it means, right? It means beloved, but you could make a play on words, and Arizal and Ramelech and others, right, do make that play on words. And then an uncle, what's an uncle? An uncle is not yelling at you, right? An uncle is not going to scold you, he's just showing up to give gifts. Right, it's not obviously it's not what it means. Right, the word dodi is from a language of yedidut, from like a relationship or a friendship, or probably better. Friendship is not a good word. It's a closer relationship than that. Yeah, as we sometimes the parents have to punish and straight out the kid, but the uncle is the one who kind of gives gifts without any strings attached. So during Elul, Kosh Baruch Hu is like an uncle, right? Who gives us with unending kindness, just wants to make us happy. Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Ches, Dirshu Hashem behimatzo, right? Seek out Hashem wherever he can be found. Kra'u biyaso karov, right? Call him when he can be close, right? It's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, right? That is, right? Dirshu Hashem behimatzo, right? Seek out Hashem when he is close. That's during Eser Smei Tshuva, but excuse me, the Sefer Haflah says that the during the month of Elul, right, Akash Baruch Hu is even closer, right? It's not only where he is found, it's Bioso Karov. It's when he is closer, right? That Kiru Bioso Karov, call him when he is close. That's when that's in Elul. That's when Akash Baruch Hu is close to us, and he can be found very, very easily. So Elul also, right, in addition to being a time of yira and seriousness, there's also great love and closeness that we feel that we have with the Kosh Baruch Hu. Right? To tell about Rosh Shlomo Carlebach, they used to walk around smiling on Rosh Hashanah. People used to ask him, "Aren't you afraid of the judge?" And he would say, "Yeah, but the judge is my father, so things are good." Right? Rabbi Yisrael Reisman, right, from Brooklyn, tells a story about once he had to go to court to find a ticket, right, for something that he did. And he brought all his proof and all his pictures, and he was nervous and whatever. And then he showed up, and the judge was some guy who came to his Motzei Shabbos shir, right? And immediately he relaxed because he knows the guy, he knows the judge. So and sure enough, he was found innocent. So there's this dual aspect, right, of fear and love. And that is the perfect departure point, the perfect combination of circumstances, right, for us to sit and reanalyze our own lives. Because on the one hand, we need to take this seriously, right? If we don't, right, no one's actually going to sit and go through all of your actions in midos. That's like a ton of work, right? There's no way I'm doing that, and anyone's doing that unless it's absolutely necessary. Are you taking an accounting of your entire life? Do you know how long that's supposed to take? So no one is going to actually just sit and do it. And the haraya, the proof is that we don't just sit down and do it in the middle of, I don't know, teves or whatever. So we have a healthy sense of fear, of seriousness that gets us going, that gets us motivated, right? That gets us started. That's one of the reasons why we blow tshuva, right? The entire Elul, right? The Rambam says Nil Chashuma famously, right? The blowing of the shofar is Uru Yishenu Mishenaschem, right? Wake up, you silly people, from your slumber, from your sleep. You need that jolt to get us out of our regular habits, and that seriousness gives us that gravity, and that impetus, and like kind of that push, right, to get us going. On the other hand, right, we don't need to get depressed or overwhelmed, right, or terrified, because the judge is our father, the king is in the field, and we're going to get Siyata Dishmaya. As we quoted before, right, the pasuk said, "Lulei amanti l'ros b'tuv Hashem beretz chayim." Again, it's b'tuv Hashem, right? The pasuk says that the goodness of Akash Baruch Hu, that this is going to be Gamzula Tova, that Akash Baruch Hu will help us, right? Again, Lulei Lamanti, L'ros B'tuv Hashem. If we're dreaming of seeing the goodness of Akash Baruch Hu, if that's referring to Elul, right, that the implication is B'tuv Hashem, that the goodness that Hashem is going to give us, right, that also symbolizes the closeness and what is hopefully going to result from working on ourselves. And we know Akash Baruch Hu will help us, right? Gemara says in Makos and Daf Yud, B'derech Shadam Rotzu Leilech Malichon Oso, right? And the way a person wants to go, that's what Akash Baruch Hu takes him down that path. Wherever you want to go, Hashem will take you down that path, right? You'll get Siyat Ishmael, you will get help, right? The Gemara says in Yuma and Daf Lamed Ches, right? If a person is Bala Tameh, if a person wants to become Tameh, if a person wants to mess themselves over, to then post him low. So the Gemara, Akash Baruch Hu opens that door for you. right? He will open that door. If that's what a person wants to become Tameh, Hashem will open that door for you. But Bala Taher, if a person wants to become Tahor, if wants to become pure, then Misayin also. Then Akash Baruch Hu not only will open the door, but Akash Baruch Hu will Misayeh. Misayeh means to help. Then Akash Baruch Hu will help, right, that person. And Rav Pinka says that this is something, not an acronym, but like what do you call it? Like a mnemonic, something that we say every single day in Shemona Esrei. Right? We say at the end of the first bracha in Shemona Esrei that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is Melech, Ozer, Umoshia, Umagen. That Hashem is the king. Ozer, he helps. Moshia, he saves. Umagen, he protects. He says that's a reference to this time period. That during Elul, right, he helps us. Right, he's the king. Rosh Hashanah. Ozer, he helps us to do tshuva. Moshia, he saves us on Yom Kippur. Umagen, and he protects us, right, in Sukkot's time. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu is here, right, to help us. It's not something we need to be necessarily afraid of. And if we really take a moment to stop and think about what we can accomplish during Elul, right, Rav Melech points out something fascinating, right, that Elul is not something that is just happens in a vacuum, right? Elul can be something that stays with us an entire year. Right? The tshuva we do nowadays, obviously we can't do tshuva on every single thing. We have to start the process. We can't just, we're not going to take 24 hours and just go through our entire lives and make an accounting. They say about the Gra that he could do that. We can't do that, but we can start. And we can lead that through the rest of the world, through the rest of the year. And Rav Melech says that's symbolized by the mazel for Elul. Anybody know the mazel for Elul? This is very fancy. I'd be very impressed. Right? We know there's a mazel, a certain not horoscope. That's what they use it nowadays. But there's a certain constellation or whatever they translate it as for every month. Right? The famous ones are Adar is a fish. Right? Tishrei is a scale. So anybody know Elul? Elul is which constellation? It's Virgo, or it's the woman. So it says Ramelech because women have bina. Women have an extra understanding of deeper, an understanding of that something deeper than was actually happening. Meaning that women understand that actions are not just surface level. They understand what's going on behind the scenes. They're able to understand one thing from another. So there's more here that meets the eye. That what we accomplish in Elul, right, is able to continue, right, and help us, right, continue throughout the year. So let's focus on the simcha a little bit. Right, again, this closeness that we achieve during Elul that can land, can kind of rocket us towards the rest of the year. As opposed to the Yira, we'll definitely have time for talking about the Yira before Rosh Hashanah and the tshuva process that we have to go to. But let's focus on the Simcha. As obviously we'll get to the other stuff. We know that Mishenichnas of Matin b'Simcha, right? When Chodesh Av comes, right, we reduce our Simcha, right? As opposed to Mishenichnas Adar Marbim b'Simcha, right? When Adar comes, we increase our Simcha. So Av is over. Right, it ended 3 days ago, and so back to our regularly scheduled program, right, which is Simcha. Right, throughout the year, we're supposed to be b'Simcha. We're in relationship with Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We're supposed to ivdu as Hashem b'Simcha. We're supposed to serve Hakadosh Baruch Hu b'Simcha. So we're back to that regular state. Rav Melech points out that we all know that Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. But imagine, right, for if you can, right, let's say a king told you that in 30 days you'd have a court case right against you, right? But he was giving you 30 days to prepare a defense and ask for mercy, etc., etc. That is obviously much better than just having a day of judgment without any prep whatsoever, right? So that is the simcha. That's one of the simchas that we have in Elul, and it definitely is crucial to prepare this defense, right? Not to waste the opportunity. We'll talk about right how to concretize that in a second, but that we have an opportunity here. And this is part of the simcha that we have an opportunity to prepare for Rosh Hashanah, to prepare for the judgment, and go into that judgment in a good way. Rav Melech points out that the beginning of Hilchos Pesach, stay with me. Yeah. The Mechaber writes, or the Shulchan Aruch writes, that we start learning, halachos of Pesach 30 days before the Chag, right, to prepare for the holiday. We don't say Tachnun, no Chodesh Nisan, right? He lists a bunch of halachos, right, referring to Chodesh Nisan. At the end of that siman, at the end of that part of Shulchan Aruch, right, the Ramah writes, and we have a minhag to eat and drink on Isru Chag, on the day after the holiday. And everyone asks, what are you talking? Isru Chag. This is the first siman in the halachos of Pesach. We're talking about the stuff that starts 30 days before Pesach. You're supposed to learn Hilchos Pesach. Nisan, 15 days before Pesach. Right? We don't say Tachnun and all these other halachos. What is the Ramah? Why would you mention Isru Chag? Right? The day after the holiday. in the first simon, right, in Shulchan Aruch about Pesach. So Rav Melech quotes the Tzadikei Kamai, which literally means the earlier Tzadikim, which is honestly probably just a humble way of saying that it's his idea and he didn't want to take credit for it. Anyway, says what the Indian is, the Ramah is trying to hint to us that a person shouldn't make the mistake in thinking that since the holiday is 30 days away or 15 days away, right, you have time to waste. You could learn Hilchos Pesach a couple of days before and you'll be fine. Says the Ramah pretty soon, before you blink, right? It's Isru Chag. It's already the day after the holiday. So we have to do that also as well, because very often we have that tendency, and the Yetzer Hara is very good at getting us to think, it's a whole month. It's not that close. We have plenty of time. El just started. It's the fourth day here in Eretz Yisrael. It's the fourth day in Elul. In Chutz La'aretz, it's the third day of Elul. You don't have to start working. Not true. Not a moment to waste. Right? The Yetzer Hara is very good at this. Before you know it, it'll be Isru Chag Sukkos, and before you know it, and it'll be too late. So that's one reason why we have a simcha. The other reason why we have a simcha, as we mentioned, right, is Kosh Baruch Hu is close to us, right? There's a love between us and the Kosh Baruch Hu, right? Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. The Mishnah Berurah quotes that in his introduction to Simon Tov Kuf Pei Aleph, right at the beginning of Halachas of Rosh Hashanah. Not sure if he's the first one to have made that acronym together, but that's perhaps where it's most famously brought down. This is a pasuk in Shir Shirim where it describes Hashem's love, right, for Am Yisrael. And Rav Asher Weiss, again, he points out that it is a tremendous chiddush. It is very odd, right, to say these are days of love. Because again, if you're talking about a judgment, that's something serious, right? The king is judging his subjects. That would not be a context of love in any other scenario, right? But excuse me, but it is true that Akash Baruch Hu loves us, and therefore, right, we have this unbelievable opportunity, right, to get close to him and work on that relationship. He's coming out towards us before the judgment, right? You have to realize how unbelievably, chesedic, how much chesed, how much unbelievable that is for us. And we know that based on the first Elul in national Jewish history, right, we know that this is the quality of the time. This is what the month is. Right? What happened in the first Elul in history? Right? People know that Moshe went up to Har Sinai to get appeasement for the sin of the golden calf. That's not exactly what happened during Elul. If that would knee jerk and ask you what happened during Elul, that happened a little bit earlier than that. What happened during Elul is that Moshe went up the second time to get the second luchos, right? And he came down, right, with the second luchos on Yom Kippur, right? So 40 days, 40 nights, right? Quick math. Rosh Chodesh Elul is when Moshe went up onto Har Sinai to get the second luchos, right? And then he came down and he commanded Bnei Yisrael to build the Mishkan, right? They brought all the materials, etc. And the clouds of glory finally came back. And the Gra happens to, right, we'll get to this when we talk about Sukkot, but the Gra writes that that's actually why we have Sukkot in Tishrei, because that's when we're celebrating the return of the clouds of glory. Okay, but the first Elul in history was a time of ratzon, of love, of reconciliation, right? Moshe had already broken the luchos, right? And now Kosh Baruch Hu was inviting him back up onto Har Sinai, right, to get the luchos, right, again, right? And that was something that symbolized the closeness between Kosh Baruch Hu and Bnei Yisrael, right? In fact, the Ramban writes that that's why we have the entire Parshios, right, of the Mishkan said again, right? We have the whole command to build the Mishkan, right? Parshas Truma and Tetzaveh, right? Parsha Kisisa is the Chet Egel, and then Vayakol Pekude is basically the exact same psukim as Tzava and Truma, just in actual building form, right? Truma Tzava is the command to build the Mishkan, and Vayakol Pekude is the actual building of the Mishkan. So you change the verb form, they're almost the exact same psukim. Says Ramban, why do we need all of that? It's so repetitive, and as a Balkore, it's so annoying. But Chas Shalom. But it's so repetitive. So it says Ramban, yeah, Hakadosh Baruch Hu had to rewrite that because Bnei Yisrael had broken that relationship with the Chet Egel, and in order to show that Hakadosh Baruch Hu had completely 100% renewed the relationship and totally forgiven them, he rewrote all of the commands, basically all of the building of the Mishkan, to show that nothing had changed. So Elul, the original Elul, the first Elul, was a time of Ani Dodi V'Dodi Li. Another acronym that they bring down is Eslavavcha Beslavav Zarecha, that Hakadosh Baruch Hu will take the Umal Hashem Elokecha, right? Hashem will do a Mila, right? As if to say, on a person's heart. that Akash Baruch Hu, right, and doing a milah removes the layer, right, in our hearts between us and Akash Baruch Hu, right? That's again, it's an Indian that Akash Baruch Hu loves us and is giving this as Sadi Ishmaya and to reconnect with him. The Baal Tanya in Lukutei Torah on Parshas Re'eh even wonders if Elul should be a Yom Tov, right? Because there's such rachman, there's such love between us and Akash Baruch Hu. Now, obviously, it's not, but the fact that he's even wondering, right, how much ava there is, right, shows how much ava there is, right? If he would even consider these days should be a day of days of Yom Tov, right, shows how much Akash Baruch Hu much love us. As an aside, right, Baal Tanya gives that mashal, fascinating mashal, as to answer why it's not a Yom Tov, right? He says that the king, let's say for example, the king decided to visit a certain city, right? So when he comes, right, everyone comes out to greet him, right? And while the king is in public, he's smiling, putting on a good face, doing the whole political thing, kissing babies, whatever. So anyone can, approach the king for a selfie, et cetera, et cetera. But once he gets back in the palace, right, then it's back to business, right? Then and he wants to see him, needs to make an appointment, only sees important people, etc. So in Chodesh Elul, Melech Basadeh, right, the king is in the field, but since he's not on the throne, then it's not a time of holiday because Hashem is not truly reigning like he normally is. Okay, fascinating, right? Because he says at the same time, right, people are able to approach and ask for things. Okay, fine. The other mashal that they give, well, there are many mashals that they give, along those same lines, is that Rav Melech tells a story about the Tsar Nicholas. There were two of them. I don't know which one it is, but he again is pretty. This is repeated a lot, I would imagine, in the shirim you're going to hear leading up to Rosh Hashanah. Anyway, he went dressed as a. You may have heard it already. He went dressed as a common man. Right, you heard the story, right? About he kind of put on regular clothes and went to the bar, right, to hear what people were saying about the Tsar. So, and while he was sitting at the table, he asked the four guys he was with, right, if the king was with you here right now, what would you ask him for? Right, so the first guy said land, the second guy said a palace, the third guy said money, and the fourth guy's like, give me a break, the king's not here, do me a favor and leave me alone. Right, and the next day, right, those three guys, right, the land, palace, and money, got exactly what they asked for, and the fourth guy got nothing. Right, so that's what we're faced here in Elul, right? While the king is among us, is close to us, right? He walks amongst us, right? If we ask for things, then we'll get it. If we just, kind of blow them off, right? So then we won't. Right, we are charged. Our job now, right, is to ask Kosh Baruch Hu for things, to approach the king, right, with an apologizing, with a committing to do better, to improve, etc., and to ask Hashem for help in that area, right, if it's too difficult for us, right, as the Gemara says in Brachos and Daf Lamed Beis, right, Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina says that if a person davens and sees they haven't been answered, so they should go back and daven again, right? Pasuk we quoted before, Kaveh el Hashem chazak v'emet tzidbecha v'kaveh el Hashem, right? A person should hope to Hashem, chazak v'emet tzidbecha, strengthen their heart, v'kaveh el Hashem, and hope to Hashem again. Right? What does that mean? It says a reference to if davening didn't have the quote unquote effect that you wanted, right? You should just daven again and go back to Kosh Baruch Hu. So what is upon us to do during this time of love, right, is kind of to make that effort and get the ball rolling, right? We're 3 days into Elul. It is not too early. It may sound too early, but it's actually 2 days too late. Right? Don't feel bad if you missed a couple of days, but it's 2 days too late. We're starting the ball rolling. We're working on ourselves. We're trying to think about what we want to accomplish during this Elul. For sure, Weitz points out that we need to put in the effort, right? Even though it's a time of love, and then Akash Baruch Hu loves us and He's close to us, we still need to put in the effort to earn that love and response from Akash Baruch Hu. After all, right? Rav Weitz points out, it points out that there are two permutations of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li in Shir Hashirim. Right? In Perek Beis, it says differently. It says Dodi Li Va'ani Lo, that my beloved is to me and I am to him. Right? Beloved with a capital B. Right? Beloved is referring to Akash Baruch Hu. Right? Our pasuk, the one that we use in Elul, is Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, that I am to Hashem, right? I am to my beloved, and then my beloved is to me. So we use that one, right? Not the other one. Right? So therefore, we have to be Ani L'Dodi. We have to start reaching out. We have to take that first step towards Akash Baruch Hu, and only then is Dodi Li. Then my beloved will be right to me. Right. So to be clear, again, I'm going to have to go through exactly what those psukim mean. But if you look in the Mitzudas David and the Gra also, right, that it says that the psukim, couple psukim before that, it says Numakshenu imach, let us go search for him. Right. So basically, Bnei Israel are saying, yes, we have to go out and search for Kosh Baruch Hu, right? And then if we go out and search for him, right, Kosh Baruch Hu, right, will come back towards us with this tremendous love. Rav Asher Weiss points out an amazing point from Rav Hirsch. Right, there's a Rashi. I hate saying that things are famous, but there's a well often quoted Rashi, right? In Shmos Perek Yud Tes Pasuk Daled. Pasuk says, again, Pasuk you probably are familiar with somewhat, if not because you live in Har Nof and there's a street called it. But the Pasuk says, "Ve'asa eschem al kanfei nisharim," that Hashem will carry us on the wings of eagles, right? Va'avi eschem elai, and I'll bring you to me. Okay, fine. Whatever the context over there is, and the Rashi over there points out that Hashem is going to carry Bnei Yisrael like the eagles carry their young. You guys have heard this Rashi before? Heard this story? Right? Kosh Baruch Hu is telling Bnei Yisrael, Hashem will carry us like eagles. What's the difference between eagles and other birds? Well, all other birds carry their young, carry their babies in their claws so that the birds of prey won't get them, right? But the eagle is not afraid of birds, right? The eagle is only afraid of humans, right? Because the eagle is the highest of all, right? Flies highest of all the birds. He's only afraid of the human archer on the ground. So the eagle leaves its young, right, on its shoulders. Right, so too, Hakadosh Baruch Hu puts us, his kids, Kiviyachol, right, on his shoulders. Right, Hashem is the eagle, right, and we are the young. Right, so Rav Hirsch just makes a simple yet unbelievable point. He says, "How do the birds get on top of the eagle? It's not like an octopus or whatever. It doesn't have arms to lift the birds and put them up there like on its back. Right, wings don't work like that. So what happens is that the eagle bends down, right? Yes, the eagle bends down, but the young birds have to climb up themselves, right? They actually have to get up there. And when they're up there flying around, right, there's no seat belts, right? There's no arms holding down the young birds. They still have to hold on for dear life, right? They have to use their own claws and strength or whatever to stay up on the back of the eagle and not fall splat on the ground. So says Rav Hirsch, that's how it works for us. Right, Kosh Baruch Hu is an eagle, right, ready to carry us to great heights. But we have to climb up and hold on for dear life, right, with our own strength and our kokos. And that's our job at the beginning of Chodesh Elul, right, with this dual kind of vibe in the air, right, to start climbing, right, to get on the eagle's back, right, to hold on for dear life, right, to start extending back towards Kosh Baruch Hu, right, by sending love towards him and realizing how much he does for us, so that he in turn, right, will extend so much more love back to us, right. Kosh Baruch Hu loves us always, right, especially now on Amelech Basada, when he's out in the field, right, we can approach him much easier than usual, right? And it's time, and this is the time to rekindle that relationship with him. Don't delay, as they say, act now, right? Time is running out. Not yet, but time is beginning to run. We'll talk about Shuva a little bit next week, but until then, right, start thinking, start planning, start making those small improvements to get yourself moving towards the Kodesh Baruch Hu, start climbing up the eagle's back. Wish everybody a tremendous hatzlacha. Thank you so much for coming, and hope you guys are good.